the middle of the verse number 4. We had almost finished the verse number 3. We had finished. And both the verses, of course, the meanings we had done. The verse number 4, a bit of interpretation was left. What Bhagavan is saying, first he mentioned about the Saguna Brahma Upasakas as Yuktatama. They are better. And he gave an example that he had already explained this in the chapter 11, that this Vishwarupa Upasana, which is Saguna Brahma Upasana, because with certain name and form, but it's not a particular image of God, but at a universal, all-inclusive image of God. That is Vishwarupa. So you are not then thinking about a lot of gods and goddesses. You are thinking about the Almighty as one and only Supreme Lord, who is all-inclusive. All other names and forms are kind of subsumed in that integral appearance, integral, imagination or appearance of the Lord during Vishwarupa Darshana. And other bhaktas, like all of us, can just believe what Arjuna saw and what was the discussion and what Bhagavan explained. We have also benefited from Bhagavan talking about himself in chapter 7 and 8 and 9 and 10. And therefore, it's easy for us to kind of meditate on Bhagavan. He says, these are superior. But the Tikakaras explained, because this is for Manda Adhikarinaha, because there are people who cannot meditate on the Nirguna Brahman. That was the context. Because otherwise, the chapter 7 or chapter 9, which is the Guhyatama, that he's saying it's the Rajaguhya, Rajavidya, it is, it's the topmost secret science that I'm giving you, that will become a fruitless sentence. Obviously, that Nirguna Brahma Upasana or meditation on the impersonal, indefinite, perfect self or the Atma is definitely the topmost secret message of Bhagavan. Nevertheless, the fact that he also mentions about Vibhuti Yoga in chapter 10, and then he talks about his own Vishwarupa and he showed it, he's saying that they are also very dear to me and they are in fact superior. Some of the commentators are mentioning that this is not to draw a comparison between Saguna and Nirguna Upasana, but in fact to give it to people, the Saguna Brahma Upasana, to people who are not yet ready for Nirguna Brahma Upasana. But because there is a lot of debate on it, Ramakrishna Paramahansa used to take a contrarian position. For example, if you look at Ramanuja, whom we refer to once in a while, he says that Bhagavan has to be Saguna. He is a person, not like an individual, but that Sarvatmaka Rupa, who is God, is personal, but he has all the qualities. He's Vishishta, he's describable, but he has all the qualities you can think about. He has all the, those, what you call omni attributes. He's omnipresent, omniscient, omni affectionate. You just add omni, then everything else sort of belongs to him. And he has all the powers to manifest the way he wants. And this sansara is kind of part of this whole Leela. So this Nirguna Brahman, he says no. I mean, that is just meaningless, because who will create all this? This Adhyasa and Maya, he doesn't accept it. So he says God directly creates everything out of his own imagination, Sankalpa Matrena. He will quote a lot of Upanishads, and there are a lot of sentences who will support him. So Ramakrishna kind of integrated both to say that Brahman can be both Saguna and Nirguna. You are not to decide. It seems if you look at chapter 12, that Bhagavan is having given a lot of importance to Nirguna Brahma Upasana in chapter 9. In chapter 10, he talks about his vibhutis, which means that Saguna thing comes out. And then in 11, he shows himself. But he also saying, this is my Rupa. So Shankaracharya's interpretation powerfully comes in, because if you say, this is my car, you cannot be the car. So if Bhagavan says, this is my Rupa, then he is different from that Rupa. That is very simple. Your appearance can change, but you are above it. You are the owner, or you are the adhisthana, you are the foundation or the platform for that appearance. So Shankaracharya's interpretation that Brahman is finally Nirakara Nirguna still holds a very, very powerful position, which very few people have been able to ably refute. Now, Ramakrishna doesn't refute it, but he adds that Saguna thing is also fine. Who are you to decide whether Brahma is Saguna, Nirguna? Brahmana, is Saguna is also fine, Nirguna is also fine. Because he is kind of an oceanic approach. He didn't disagree with anything. He says the summation of all your spiritual perceptions and perspectives, the test of all your perspectives is in practice. And he was one who practiced and he showed it to the world that he could do both. I just mentioned it as a context because we will have a lot of argument in this chapter, in these next three verses that we are going to do today, about a certain kind of a comparability between Nirguna Brahma Upasana and Saguna Brahma Upasana. So he mentioned that they are Nitya Yuktaha in the verse number 2, who sort of establish their mind in me and with a lot of love and affection, Shraddhaya Paraya Upetaha, te me yukta tamamataha. Those who are like Nitya Yukta Upasate, those who surrender and meditate on me. And then he shifts his attention to the Nirguna Brahma Upasakas, and he says, Ye tu akyaram Anideshyam avyaktam paripasate. That sort of a Brahman, which is Nirguna Nirakara Brahman, and we had a lot of discussion during our last class on each adjective. Why avyakta? Because sarvagata. And then why anirdeshya? Why it's not different from you, and it's sarvatraga, means sarvatram gacchati. It goes everywhere. Sarva vyapaka. Achintyam, you cannot think about it. Why? To be able to think about it, it should be perceivable through your senses. You cannot think about something where you cannot use your language. And he's avyakta. Therefore, you cannot even think about it. Kutastham, and we discussed what is. He's the adhisthana. Imagine adhisthana. There is just one thing. The appearance is just a joke from the Advaita Vedanta perspective. So he's called Kutastham. Achalam, because where will he move? There is nowhere where he is not there. To be able to move anywhere, there should be somewhere where Bhagavan is not there. But he is everywhere, so he cannot move anywhere. So he's Achalam, Sthiram, Nityam, Dhruvam also, because he's Achalam. That sort of a Brahman, those who people who do worship, how do they do it? Sangniyamya Indriya Gramam. So they control their Indriyas. Indriya Grama means Indriya Samoha. You have those 6 Indriyas. 5 Jnanendriyas and Manas. 6 Indriyas we have, 1 Sukshma or internal, 5 external. Sarvatra Samabuddhayaha. And these people are Sarvatra Samabuddhi Sampanna. Now this Sangniyamya, there is a beautiful interpretation by Sankarananda. What he's trying to say, why do you need to do sense control? Why do you need to control your senses in order to be able to meditate on God? He gives a very good simple example. In order to meditate on anything, you must have your mind as your friend, because we have already discussed that this mind can be friend or enemy if it has been educated, trained, like a wild dog. One of these very good dogs, if you train them, they can be very protective about your children also. And you must have seen a lot of YouTube, very popular series on dogs and cats and things like that. Even wild dogs, very fearsome dogs, they're very protective about very harmless, innocent kids, and they play with them once they're trained. Similarly, this mind, if it's trained, it's a friend, otherwise an enemy. The mind has to be a good friend. Now, the mind cannot be a friend if your mind is getting connected with external objects, which will entice you to leave your japa or dhyana or studies or work or office desk and go and engage with that particular object of perception, be it a book, be it a person, be it a cricket score, be it anything. Once you go there, that particular samadhi, whatever that resolution of mind that you want to achieve, either to study a book or finish a report or write minutes of a meeting that you just had, that's not going to succeed. Right? That resolution will be affected. Therefore, what this sanyama is not that you are kind of putting them under yoke, you're chaining them, nothing like that. It's basically Visaya Grahana Vimukhikarana. So you are dissuading the mind, you're dissuading yourself from not looking at Visaya Grahana. getting connected with external objects of your senses. So these senses become controlled. Not that you are physically trying to do anything, because they are sukshma things, they are subtle things. So you can't bind them up. So not paying attention, that is what is control. That's a very good, that's why I shared that not paying attention to them and looking at your mind remaining faithful to you when you're sitting in samadhi. That sort of sanyamya indriya gramam sarvatra samabuddhaya. And that is also very interesting. What is samabuddhi? Oh, I mean, that will be beautiful commentary by Madhusudana Saraswati and and Shankaracharya here. What Samabuddhi they are referring to is saying is there are two ways to look at it. Now, if you are meditating on the Brahman and Nirguna Brahman, then you are accepting this phenomenal world is not necessarily fundamentally real. And you are having a clear sense of Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivekaha. This sansara is anitya, it's temporary, it's transient, ephemeral, apparent for a while. It will appear and it's like a montage. So you have flashes of pictures appearing and vanishing. End of the day, what stays is that adhisthana, that easiness, that Brahman on which you are meditating, Satchidananda Swarupa. When you are doing this vicharana, then obviously, whether somebody is a friend or an enemy, some food which is served to you is very tasty or not so tasty, a certain experience you have is very pleasant or not so pleasant, ceases to be important to you. That is the samabuddhi you have. It doesn't mean you become dumb that you cannot distinguish a car from a bus or a certain flight from another airline. So then you'll be in a mess, because then you have to board a certain flight. You will go to some other place where the boarding is taking place another gate. You go somewhere. No, it's not loss of a sense of direction or distinction in life. Discrimination, distinction, and analysis, all these powers will be with you, but you will become a person with a sense of equanimity, a deep sense of equilibrium. That is what is samabuddhi sampanna, samabuddhaya. And the other thing, because you are always interested in nirvishesha Brahman. So you see everything, Sarvam Vasudevamiti, that is your meditation. And therefore, you are not, this is also part of your sadhana. If you are not Samabuddhi Samparna, it will not be possible for us to meditate on everything as Sarvam Vasudevamiti. Everything is fundamentally Brahman. Those who are interested in that highest level of realization of the Nirguna Nirakara Brahman, which we are discussing in verse number 4, 5. Okay, and then we'll go to 6, which is a transitional verse, and we'll go there. Now, Sanyamya Indriya Gramam Sarvatra Samabuddhaya. You become like that. Te prapnuvanti mam eva. And they also get me. It's not that the Nirguna Brahma, lest somebody have a doubt that the Saguna Upasakas, these people who are meditating on the Supreme Lord with name and form, are very good. They're supreme, they're superior. Does it mean everybody else is engaged in fruitless sadhana, fruitless endeavorance, not leading to any destination? No, that's not so. That is also very meaningful, and they also get Bhagavan. How he's explaining. Te prapnuvanti mam eva. What kind of mam? They will not get Vasudeva with the Murali. No. Why? Because they are not meditating on Vasudeva with the Murali. They're meditating on Vasudevam Sarvamiti. That Vasu Sarvatmaka Rupa. So without any Rupa actually. Sarvatmaka Dharmatvena. They're meditating on that Vichara they are doing, because it's all about an analytical meditation where you're making your mind very subtle and sharp and analytical, so you lose interest in the particulars and the mind becomes more and more subtle and wider at the same time. The lens becomes so sharp and wider that you can almost capture the essence of the whole universe. It's very thin thing, and the whole essence of the whole universe you can capture, and you are in a state of complete peace, because everything else, it all appears like you are seeing a few films. but you see yourself as different from the films you see. So it's all imagery all around. And it's a canvas on which you're seeing a lot of paintings, a lot of movies, a lot of characters, but you are not in any way. Doesn't mean it makes you alienated. You'll be very much everywhere. You'll be talking to people, you are doing everything. But there is a deep, a refined, subtle disconnection from any bondage. You are connected, you are sensitive to people, you are not becoming, there's no lack of compassion or love or affection, but you are doing everything. But you are just cutting that umbilical cord of raga dvesha, and that particular thing, attraction, aversion, that is snapped. As a result of that snapping, you are everywhere, not caught up anywhere. It's, as Ramakrishna used to say, that fish in flooding water. The elephant gets stuck. The fish keeps swimming. It's not affected because it's a Atmagyani. So it doesn't make any difference. Water is clean, flowing very fast. It's flooding river or what. It doesn't, it doesn't think about it. And I see that in Ganges. The fish is very stable. When you throw some food, you can watch them. They are not at all affected by the very strong current of Ganga river. They are not affected at all. I don't know how they manage it, because they are not at all swimming. They're just quietly still. They can manage to be there. And this go by, just maybe this flap their tail a little, and then they just go in any direction. They can swim in opposite direction. They absolutely are not affected by the flow of the sansara or Ganga, whatever you call it. They papnuvanti mam eva. And what is that mam? Not saguna sakara, but Sachidananda Swarupa. That Brahman they get. Sarva Bhuta Hite Rataha. And they are, all the time engaged in Hita, well-being of the whole universe. How can they be interested in well-being of the whole universe? This is a very logical question you will ask. Why? Because they apparently are very selfish people, isn't it? They're sitting and meditating, not interested in anything, disconnected from everything that you just mentioned. They will not even look at anything with any seriousness, any involvement. And then you are saying Sarva Bhuta Hite Rataha. That is interpreted by the wise commentators in two ways. One, Upadrava Nirasana Purvaka. That means you are not troubling anyone. So essentially, this is a negative love in the sense that you are essentially not showing any signs of harming or causing any harm to anyone, right? That is the kind of thing. So Upadrava Anacharana Purvaka. No Acharana Upadrava, no harm. You are not going to harm anybody. That's one. The other one is that because you are meditating on whom? Sarvam Vasudeva Miti. So everything for you is divine. So you have an attitude of love because you see yourself as everywhere. There's a boy coming. You don't see any difference between you and that boy. So you have a deep sense of love and compassion for everybody. In that sense, it's a glorious emotion. Maybe at a very high level of meditation or at a high level of self-realization, you can see the gurus. As they're mentioning India, a lot of foreigners, they have this book called The Laughing Swamis. They're all the time laughing and walking around because they're kind of in a very exalted state. And they are Sarva Bhuta Hite Rataha. These are two of the interpretations, and we'll look at what others are mentioned. They also get me. That is what he mentions in verse number 4. And we had already mentioned that Sanyamya, Samyak Niyamya, comprehensively, Sanghritya, that means withdrawing, Indriya Gramam, the senses, Indriya Samudayam, Sarvatra, Sarvasmin Kale, Sarvatra means all the time. It's not that it northerly direction or southerly direction, it's all everywhere, Samabuddhayaha. What is Samabuddhi for Shankaracharya? Sama Tulya Buddhi Yesam, whose mind is similar. It doesn't jump around. It doesn't have any anger or frustration or happiness or exaltation or depression. Yesam Ishtanishta Praptote Samabuddhaya. So if you reward them, they are smiling. If you shout at them, they are smiling. That kind of a Samabuddhi Sampanna. Samabuddhaya te evam vidhaha. Like this, they prapnuvanti. They get me. Mam eva. Sarva Bhuta Hite Rataha. So they get me. So what does it mean? That the Saguna Upasakas are Yukta Tamas, but the Nirguna Upasakas also get me. The follower is one. The result is one, both of Saguna and Nirguna Upasana, and we will see the direction because he has already mentioned in chapter 8 that those who do my dhyana, not Jnana Brahman, but meditate on the Dhya Brahma, which is Saguna Upasana, they will have to go to Brahma Loka. From there, they'll get mukti. Okay, they will not have Sadhya Mukti like the Jnanis. He has mentioned that, he cannot contradict it. So we have to put it in that context. Natu tesam vaktavyam kinchin mam te papnuvanti. But you cannot say that because they are not Saguna Upasakas, who are Yukta Tamas, they will get a little of me, not all of me. No, no, no. They are also Yukta Tamas. Jnani to Atmeva me manasi matam iti uktam. So Jnanis, so Atma eva, because they are also same. I mean, the Jnani, end of the day, where does he go? Brahmavid Brahmeva Bhavati. He is no different from Bhagavan. Nahi Bhagavat Swarupanam, the people who have that Aham Brahmasmi Pratyaya, they have reached that highest level of meditation. Bhagavat Swarupanam, who almost realize the Swarupa of Bhagavan in their consciousness. Satam, Yukta Tamatvam, Ayukta Tamatvam va Vachyam. You're going to talk about who's Yukta Tama, who is Anukta. We can talk about, so how much you scored? 95. How much you scored? 96. You can be happy or sad. Somebody who has finished his master's, has done his PhD, has done his postdoctoral, he has written papers, he has guided students doing PhDs. What score he did in master's, does it hold any importance for him? It doesn't. So this comparison, who is Yuktatama or not, obviously for comparison should be with people. You can mention that Nirguna Upasana, Bhagavan has mentioned it, and we'll explain why he mentioned, because he has to motivate Arjuna, who is not ready, who doesn't have the capacity for Nirguna Upasana. That is why he's just trying to help him out with a word of motivation. But we have to understand here that so far a Nirguna Upasaka is concerned, you cannot further make classification of Nirguna Upasakas. Because once they have reached that Niratisaya Sukha, there is nothing more to be achieved. And there is nothing more or less there. In that sense, he's mentioning. Now, however, he says, yes, they are Yuktatama, no problem. They are also Yuktatama. But I tell you why I am telling you, you should be a Saguna Upasaka right now. One of the reasons he's mentioning is, it's very difficult to do Nirguna Upasana. It's like, you just look at this Vedanta we are doing, right? You go to an ISKCON temple, what do? They'll do one sloka of Bhagavatam without going into the details. And they do a sort of dance, they do a japam, and you think their mind is not pure. No, they have a wonderful time with Bhagavan. And this Janmashtami I had gone, I looked at them jealously. How happy they look. They don't care for anything, they dance. You look at the YouTube channels as to why it spread so fast, this bhakti thing, because common people can relate to it. Vedanta, this Adhyayana is meant for a few. Quantum mechanics is not meant for all. The computer science, okay, if you programs and you become a programmer, that's different. But getting into computer science, that's not meant for all. That's meant for people who have a love for mathematics, who can dabble in it, they can sit for hours and hours in the library. Their life, in fact, is very boring. They enjoy it, but for rest of the world, it's very boring. So the life of a serious Vedantian is very boring. What does he do? He studies, he sits in meditation, he talks things which are difficult to understand. He's a boring fellow. On the other hand, the one who can tell stories, who can tell you, okay, let's do a bit of exercise, let's do a bit of dance and kirtan, obviously he's more lively. And that is what gels with millions and millions of people. So what Bhagavan says in that sense, in the verse number 5 comes, Klesodhikatarastesam abhyakta sakta chetasam abhyakta higatir dukkham dehavadbhiravapyate. And he explains why this Nirguna Upasana is so challenging. Kleso adhikataraste. It's not that Saguna Upasana is not problematic. Of course, it's problematic. You have to have Chitta Siddhi, you have to have Kamana Vasana, you have to reduce it, you have to be all the have Mat Paraha, you have to be all the time surrender to the Lord. Whatever karma you have to do, you have to surrender to Him. Mat Karma, you have to do everything for Him. It's not an easy thing, it's very hard. Only one person manages. And amongst that particular 1%, amongst those people who constitute that tiny 1%, maybe 0.001% of the people who can do this nirguna upasana in a very serious way. That's what Bhagavan says. Klesho adhikataraste. So adhika klesha is also there in Saguna upasana, but here it's even more challenging. Tesam abhyakta chetasam. For whom? For whom it's very difficult. Those who are doing abhyakta chetasa. Abhyakta is what? He has already explained in the previous verse. In the verse number 3, that abhyakta means that achala, abhyakta, dhruva is that atma satta, of which they are doing upasana, they are doing meditation on that. Abhyaktahi gatir dukkham. Now, the very destination, gati is here the destination. What is the destination of your meditation? Reaching Brahma. That this whole mukti is abhyakta, moksha prakti, with your dissolution or your full identification or removal of all differences between you and this ultimate truth, this Supreme Lord. That particular thing, it's gatir dukkham, it's full of klesha, it's full of difficulty. For whom? Oh, not for a sarvakarma sannyasi. It's not for Bhamadeva who gets birth. He just wakes up, says, Mama, bye bye. Where are you going? No, actually, I'm liberated. I have nothing to do with anyone. I've done all sadhana. I'm grateful to your mother. You gave me birth. I'm self realized. He just goes, leaves. He blesses his mother and leaves. And you look at Sukadeva, you know, he's just a young boy. He knows all the texts and everything. So you have a lot of these yoga vrashtas who have finished their sadhana earlier. They're just burned in order to manifest. And there are a lot of saints that we have seen in this life, whether it's Ramakrishna Paramahansa, Swami Vivekananda, or Sri Aurobindo, a lot of, they have finished all their sadhana previously. They just came here to distribute their love and affection. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all these people. So, Dehavadvihi abhyapyate. For whom it's very adhikatara klesha? Dehavadvihi. Those who identify with their body. Those who think that I have a body, I'm a young man, I'm a young woman, I have this, I have that. For those people, it's very challenging. Now, can they do Saguna Upasana? Perhaps. Slightly easier. Because they will do all their work. They haven't got rid of all their vasanas, and they can be in Grihastha Ashrama, they can do anything. We have also seen examples of people who there are few characters who in fact had a few other weaknesses. It could be food, it could be woman, but they were so lovingly obsessed with the Lord that ultimately they were liberated. There was nothing sort of standing between their love for God and their all other things. But during there will be moments when they'll be dabbling with anything. And there are many such bhaktas we've heard about him. Like, you had this character Billo Mangala, who was very obsessed with one quotation. But then she says that you are mad after me. What if you could be so mad after Lord Krishna? And his life changes. You heard the same thing about Tulsidas, and there are several other characters. We don't know whether we all make up such stories to motivate people to turn to devotion or they were actually true. But in real life, you must have seen there are a lot of people who are very sansaris, very materialistic people. At the same time, they have very deep dedication to Bhagavan. I have seen that. And they have no compromise there. And that's a kind of saving grace for them. And that's a kind of anchor for their ship, that it moves a little, but they don't suffer any shipwreck. So it's saying that Deha Vadavihi Avapyate. Now let's look at the commentators, what they have to say. First thing is why it is called Kleshatara. So if you look at, to do Nirguna Upasana, you have a long chain. You have to do Nitya Vastu Viveka, and then you have to do Tyaga, Vairagya Sadhana Chatushta you have to do, right? And then Samadhamadi Satka Sampati. Then you will go Mumukitu, you must have. Then you will go Guru Upashadana and have Sravana Manana Nididhyasana. Till then you must have finished your Varnashrama Krama. You must have made your family member satisfied with your conduct, whether your wife or mother. You must have done your duty towards your children or siblings. And then you should have done your whatever related to your material well-being. You finish everything. and then you are taking Banaprastha, studying everything. It's a long distance to cover. Therefore, he's saying that this is basically the klesataraha. So Shankaracharya says, Nanu klesho adhikataro yadyapi mat karmadi paranam klesho adhikatarastu akhyaratmanam paramartha darshinam देह अभिमान परित्याग निमित्तो अव्यक्त सक्त चेतसाम अव्यक्त आसक्तम चित्त येसाम. So he's saying, though there is also difficulty in people who will be mat karmakrit, who are dedicating their life for me, that life is also not very easy. That I accept. Even then, compared to them, the people who want to do paramartha darshana, those who are not interested in the phenomenal world, and therefore they are not interested in the saguna sakara rupa of mind. They want to go beyond names and forms, and then they have to do what? Deha abhimana parityaga nimitta abhyakta asakta chetasam. They are now, for example, you see the deha abhimana, they have been able to do it already. And how they have been able to do it? Because they are meditating all the time. That abhyakta asakta, they are attached to what? The abhyakta, not the phenomenal world. They want to be focused on the nirguna Brahman. That kind of chetasam, they are obsessed in their mind. Abhyakta asaktam chitta yesam, whose mind is kind of fixated on this idea of the paramartha satya, that satchidananda swarupa, that satyam jnanam anantam brahma, that sort of understanding of the Brahman. Yesam te abhyakta asakta chetas, tesam abhyakta asakta chetasam. So it's just grammatically expanding that word. Abhyakta hi yasmat yagatihi aksharatmika. So what is that destination? Gati is jnana. Gati can also be destination. What is that? Abhyaktatmika. It's not something that you can talk about. We have already discussed that in verse number 3. That abhyaktatmika, which we cannot talk about. Dukkhamsa, it's full of pain. Why? Dehavadvihi, because you are still having deha vimana. I'm a Rajput, I'm a Brahmin. You have these kind of thoughts. I'm a man, I'm very handsome, I'm very rich. All those things. Dehavadvihi, deha avimana vadvihi abhapyate. So they will get that problem. Ataha klesho adhikataraha. Akshara upasakanam yad vartanam tad uparistad vakhyamaha. So those Akshara upasakas, and how do they sort of do these and how they achieve it and what are the problems? I'm going to talk about it in the next few verses. Now, just let's look at anyone else who is interesting. And yeah, so there is one sentence about this Sarva Bhuta Hite Rataha, and we will do the Madhusudana of both now. Number 1. Katham punar visaye indriya sangniyamya swa visayabhyah apasangritya indriya gramam karna samudayam etena samadamadi sampati utta. This is Madhusudana. So they will love samadama sampati, have that, then they will control the senses. Visaya bhoga vasanayam satyam kuta indriyam tatah nibriti tatraha. But how can you control your mind if you have Vishaya and Vasana? Therefore, he is saying, Sarvatra they have already, samabuddhi sampannaha. Sarvatra vise samatulyaha harsadi harsha visadabhyam ragadevasebhyam sa rahita matir yesam. So they are able to do this indriya sanyamya because they already have tattva darshana. They have understood chapter 7, 8, and 9 very seriously. They paid a lot of attention. They have also done the earlier chapters. Because they have all these, the chapter 6 they have perfected. They have done, they know how to control their mind, and they are also raga dvesha rahita. Therefore, for them, because they don't have this nitya vastu aviveka, they don't have it, lack of discrimination. So they have I am atma eva, and the sansara is not so attractive, and therefore they manage to do control of their senses. Etena vasikara shangya vairagya muktam. That vairagya, that if you remember the yoga sutras that we had done, what is vairagya? That vasikara shangya, the ability to control all your senses. Ateva sarvatra atma drishtya, everything is self. Okay, hingsa karana dvesa rahitatvad sarvabhuta hite rataha. So why do you do any violence towards anyone? because you have dvesha. What is dvesha? A strong dislike, or some dvesha is you have some difference, and then it can get irritated. Then you feel a bit of anger, and feeling a bit of disgust about anything because it's not good. That is different from anger, because anger is it's kind of like it's like a cancer. It grows on you. So ite ratah abhayam sarvabhutebhyo mattah swaha. So this is a particular offering which is given when you take sannyasa, saying I am giving abhaya to everybody, and swaha, you offer the ghee, because that is a kind of sacrifice. You are sacrificing all your ahankara, and you pose no threat to the whole cosmos, and that is how you are ready for sannyasa. Iti mantrena datta sarvabhutanam sarvabhuta abhaya dakshina. You are giving that dakshina to everybody. I am giving you this dakshina. What is that? Abhaya. I shall not harm you. So the sannyasis are not supposed to get angry, and they do, but they are not supposed to, they raise their hands. But you'll still see here, I have seen that they may not be very wise, but most of these sadhus, after some years, when they perfect that skill of becoming a sadhu, they just know how to, be withdrawn. They manage to be withdrawn from whatever is going on. They just know if you humiliate them, shout at them, or something, irrespective of whatever that their past be, they know just how to hold themselves back, and they will walk away. That they learn to manage. So Kruta Sannyasa iti yavat. Abhyam sarvabhutebhyo dattva sannyasam acharet iti smriti. This is manusmriti, that without giving abhaya to everybody, lack of fear, lack of apprehension, you have to assure that to the world, and then you can take sannyasa. Evam vidhaha sarva sadhana sampannaha. Sadhana will be samadhamadi or satka sampatti sampannaha. Santaha swayam brahma bhuta nirvichiksena. Okay, nirvichikitsena. So without any sandeha, they don't have any vichikitsa. Sakshatkarena, and then have direct perception of the reality of Brahman. Sarva sadhana phalabhutena, and they have finished all this Savana, Manana, Nididhyas and everything. Mam Aksharam Brahma eva te papnuvanti. They get this Sachidananda Swarupa, Akshara Brahma. Purvam api madrupa eva santo abidya nibritya madrupa eva tishtanti ityarthaha. And earlier, the Saguna Upasakas also, they get me, Madrupam, and because they also get rid of their, and so Brahmeva sana Brahma apyeti. So they reach the Brahman, they have this Nirguna Upasana, and then they become Brahman themselves. Brahma Veda Brahmeva Bhavati Ityadi Srutibhya Ihapi Cha Jnani to Atmeva Me Matam. Bhagavan, that's why he's saying Jnani to Atmeva Me Matam. Jnani is not different from me. So Jnani is very much me only. Okay? That's what Bhagavan says. Iti Uktam. This is 3 and 4. Idanim etebhya purvesam atisayam darsayan aha. So what are these Saguna Upasakas? How they are slightly better? Why Arjuna should opt for Saguna Upasana? Bhagavan explains. Kleshu adhikatara iti. Purvesam api visebhya ahritya. Sagune brahmani mana aveshana satatam tat karma parayanatvecha परश्रद्धा उपेतत्वेच क्लेशो अधिको भवति एव किन्तु अव्यक्तासक्तचेतसां निर्गुण ब्रह्म चिंतन पराणां तेषां पूर्वक्त साधनवतां क्लेश आयासोऽधिकः अतिशयेन अधिकः. So what he's trying to say, we just discussed, and he's putting it in his own language. He's saying that in both the cases, you need a lot of spiritual practice to be able to be connected with the divinity, whether you are a Saguna Upasaka or a Nirguna Upasaka. But in case of Nirguna Upasaka, the whole, the scale of preparation, it's like, why it is so. I was just thinking about it, what example to give. So you have 2 students who land up in a university to do a PhD. And you must have seen some of your friends or some of your students. Then one guy has done a master's degree in a university where they have a paper on research methodology, and he sort of is exposed to a lot of literature. The other student has studied in a university, or he's trying to change his subject, he's switching his subject, and therefore he's not very familiar with the wide range of areas of studies in that particular subject, number one. So the literature survey will take him a lot of time. He has deep interest in studying a particular thing, but he's not very familiar with the terrain through which he wants to take his thought process. He wants to steer his thought process through a terrain he's not familiar with, and then he hasn't studied all the texts, so he doesn't have the skills. And if he's having some problems with a particular language, he has to learn to read the primary text. That is even more problematic. Like, he wants to do a PhD in math. Computer science is not very good in mathematics, so many of the research papers, maybe he will struggle to grasp properly. That sort of a student wants to do PhD. Complete dedication. There is no dearth of dedication in him. The other one is actually very strong in all that, and he's kind of a perfected guy. He's an adept in all this, very quiet, very confident. He's not no interest in looking for a job or anything, and he's got a scholarship. He will do a PhD. He's not distracted. He can actually finish it. His singular goal he has, that I want to do my PhD. He'll do it without any problem. The other guy is likely to do a bit of struggle, because he has to maybe do a job somewhere, plus he has to study a lot of literature. Then he has to do several things to be able to write his PhD thesis. That is how the student who has a bit of financial crisis, he has to do a job. Maybe he's already married. Maybe he has to support a wife. Then he has to study a lot of literature. And what the professor tells him, he says, okay, you want to do all this? Okay. Why don't you do one thing? You work on this project. He says, why don't you join my project? You don't have to look for a job outside. You work on my project. And my PhD, that will wait. It will take longer. But you will work on this project, and through this project, you will get a PhD. Which you want to do? You want to work on that subject matter or this particular topic? I have already ready my project. There is fund available. You don't have to struggle, and you have to assist in my work and do some literature survey. And you will grow in understanding of this particular area, because you will be part of a lot of discussion groups and seminar groups. What do you want to do? The student agrees. That is the wisest decision for him. Because if he starts in a unknown terrain, just because the fanciful desire he has to do a PhD there, he might start and never finish it. And there are so many cases like that. Therefore, he joins the professor, works on the project, works for 3, 4, 5 years, and finishes a PhD. Maybe he works for 7 years, but he manages to finish his PhD. That is what is Yuktatama, because he's intelligent there. This is something which is sustainable. So Bhagavan here is now comparing, and he's saying that the one who wants to do everything at the same time, he has to also have Indriya Grama Sanyama, and then Nitya Vastu Viveka, then he wants to perfect Vairagya, then he wants to study a lot of literature, and then he has a family, he has to take permission from his wife to take sannyasa. Too many things is not possible. So he has to say, I will do my Saguna Upasana, but I'll study Vedanta. Wonderful. Because you are already having a good study, and you're doing your job, and you're serving it to God, and you're having Sastra Vichara, mind is good, time is used properly. That is how Bhagavan says. That is what he's explaining here, and that is why this is more difficult. Klesatara adhika. Okay. So now let's move. Sagune Brahmani mana avesana satatam. So then that is why it is klesa adhikatarha. Atra swayam eva hetumaha. Bhagavan is himself saying, because abhyaktahi gatihi, that particular abhyakta, that destination is difficult to reach. He yasmad akhyaratmakam gantavyam phalabhutam brahma. What is that abhyaktahi gati means? Gati here is very obvious. It's about jnana. It's about the gantavya sthala, the destination of your Brahma sadhana, Brahma vidya, and that is duskara, difficult to reach there. Dukkham yatha syat tatha kachrena, a lot of difficulty. Dehavadvihi, deha manivhihi avapyate, especially people who still have a bit of body identification. They want a good bed, good food, and so it will be very difficult for them. Sarva karma sannyasam kritva gurum upasritya, they have to leave samsara, study, then you have to go to guru, all at the same time. It's very challenging. Usutya Vedanta vakyanam tena vicharena tad Brahma nirakarane, and all kinds of difficulties and doubts that will come to mind. You have to remove them. Mahan prayasaha, very, very difficult endeavor. It's a very long one. Pratyaksha siddha tataha. It's seen from the life of a lot of people who start this practice and they don't continue for too long. Kleso adhikataraha tesam iti uttam. Yadyapi ekam eva phalap tathapi. Both of them will get me only. That is the phala. That is Brahma Jnana. That is liberation, moksha. That is one phala only. Ye duskarena apayena. So those who are upayana, duskarena upayana, it's a very difficult path they are embarking on, and therefore prapnuvanti tad apekya, compared to that. Sukarena eva sukarena upayana papnuvanta bhavanti sreshta iti abhipraya. That is what is, because this is an easier path. You work for my project, 7 years you have a PhD, and you just have to adjust your time. It doesn't work all the time very nicely, but sustainable. At least he doesn't have to run out for a job. His wife will be settled. She can find something else to do. If it's a foreign university, that's how it works. Okay. Now, in the next verse, we have time. Yeah, we have time for the next verse. We'll finish it. Now, in the next verse, he's saying, compared to these Nirguna Brahma Upasakas, who undertake a lot of hardship, I am telling you, Arjuna, that you do Saguna Brahma Upasana, and this is easier for you to achieve. Why? He explains. Ye tu sarvani karmani mai sanyasya matparaha anyanyeneva yogena mam dhayanta upasate. Compared to them, the Saguna Brahma Upasakas, ye tu sarvani karmani, all the karmas they do, they don't have to take sannyasa. They can be in sansara, they can be with their wife and children, they can go to the office, not a problem. But these karmas they are doing, they constantly surrender those to me. My sanyasya, they do tyaga of these karmas for me. Does it mean they resign from job? They don't have to. They have to do it Ishvara Upasanartham, Ishvara Pityartham. That means what? They will be very honest, they'll be very compassionate, they'll not get into the office intrigues and all kinds of conflicts. They will be all the time, they'll think this is Krishna's Leela. God has given me a question paper, which is my job, which is my wife, which is my children, which are my friends. And that question paper, this Leelatmaka question paper, I will swim through taking his name. That is how they will move. It will be easier for them. All problems will be there. No problem will go away, but they will not be feeling put down by these problems because they have a powerful assurance in their heart in the form of divine protection or divine grace. And this divine grace is nothing but a reflection of their own bhakti. Divine protection is just our bhakti coming back to us in the form of protection. What is the wealth you generate? It's your own investment which comes back to you. Similarly, our devotion comes back to us as Ishvara, kripa. Kripa is nothing. Bhakti coming back. It's a reflection of our own bhakti. More the bhakti, more the kripa. Absolutely. And Purva Bhakti you have to take into account. Certainly you might get a lot of kripa that you don't expect, but because you have been very devoted without knowing, the old investments that you have never looked at can mature and you can get a reward. Somebody, the bank manager, calls you up saying that this money is lying with us. What to do? We'll reinvest or you want to take it back? It's like that. Bhagavan gives it back to you. Ye tu sarvani karmani mai sanyasya matparaha. They are matpara, dedicated to me all the time. And they think I am their ultimate destination. Ananya eva. Ananyena eva yogena. And without thinking about anything else, other gods and goddesses and games and tantrics and fortune tellers, anything, no. They are focused on me. Yogena, mam dhyayanta, and they meditate on me, they do my upasana, upasate. They are tesam aham samurdharta. I save them. The verse number 7. Tesam aham samurdharta. I become that. Mrityu sansara sagara. This sansara sagara is mayatmaka, full of falsity, and therefore death. Death is associated with falsehood, not with truth. Because as such, we are all amara, we are all immortal. We think about death because we think we are the body. That is how death and maya and the falsity, they kind of go together. So mrityu sansara sagara, that means this ajnana sagara. Bhavami, samurdharta bhavami. I become the liberator, uddharaka. Nachirat, nachirat partha, without any delay. Na achirat, that means nachirat, quickly, Na chirat, na achirat, na chirat. Chirat means after a long time. Na chirat means very quickly, achirat. Partha, Mai avisita chetasam. For whom? Whose minds are established in me. Who is me? That's Saguna Brahman. Those who are focused on me, they continue to do their work. I liberate them. That is what he mentions in verse number 6 and 7. And we'll go further. There'll be a beautiful, bargain happening between Bhakta and Bhagavan, and we'll go into that. ये तु सर्वाणि कर्माणि मयि ईश्वरे सन्न्यस्य मत्परा aham paro ye samte matparaha. Who are matparaka? Bhagavan says matpara bhava matpara. What does it mean? For whom I am the ultimate goal. They might be doing other things, but they are all doing it for me. It's like you have a job, you're doing several other things, but you're doing all this to make your job, where you are the manager, your performance should be good. That is how you organize all of the little things in life, is kind of helping you in achieving your main goal of life. And that main goal is Bhagavan. Santaha ananyena eva abhidyamanam anyad alambanam vishwarupam devatmanam muktva. Now there is a bit of controversy here how to interpret it. It means that here, that anyad alambanam, any other way to reach me, any other spiritual or material way to get happiness in life, anyat alambanam muktva, sunning those, they're focused on Vishwarupam Devatman, and focus on me, that yasya so ananyaha tena ananyena eva kevalena kena yogena. How to do it? Ananyena yogena samadhina. So they have this samadhana, resolution, complete focus on me. Mang dhyayantaha chintayantaha, thinking about me, upasate. Tesam, then what do I do to them who do like this? Tesam mad upasana eka paranam. Those who are completely only focused on me, Ishwaraha samudharta. I am become the liberator of them. I am the uddharaka samudharta. Kuta, how, why, from where? Mrityu sansara sagara. Mrityuktaha sansara mrityu sagara. He is having one interpretation. Some commentators are using the word mrityu to understand as ajnana, because ajnana is only mrityu. There is nothing called mrityu other than ignorance. Mrityu sansara sagara. Mrityuktaha sansara. This is a mortal sansara. You have life and death all the time. Mrityu sagara. Sa eva sagara eva sagara. What is that? Sagara eva sagara. Why is he saying it? Because this whole false understanding is an ocean. Like the ocean, this false understanding where we are immersed, we are drowned. This is Sagar eva Sagara. Dustaratvat is very difficult to swim through this Sagara. Tasmat Mrityu Sansara Sagarat Aham Tesam Samudhata Bhavami. I liberate them from this whole conundrum of falsehood, make believe, imaginations, which we consider or misconsider or falsely, sort of stick to as goals of our life. Bhavami. Na chirat. Very quickly. Ingtari Kipram Evahe Partha. Very quickly I come and liberate you. He's reassuring. This is quicker, isn't it? Because this Brahma Vidya I mentioned, Klesatara. And here he is saying Na chirat, very quickly. So he's a good teacher. He's creating a sense of comparison in the student so that the student is focused on what is quickly achievable. Khipram eva he partha, mai avesita chetasam. For whom? Whose minds are invested in me, whose minds are established in me, mai, in me, Vishwarupi avesitam. That is Saguna Brahman. Because he has mentioned that be mat karma krit at the end of the chapter 11, avesitam, samahitam. It's not that you're just thinking about me for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and then you're busy with all other things and I'm going to help you. No. That's not a deal at all. You have to be mat paraha. Everything else you are doing, but you are dedicating all that to me. Cheto yesam. Te mai avisita chetasam. So this is how the verse 7 is over. But so far, Madhusudan is concerned. Perhaps we don't have time. We'll do that tomorrow. There's a bit of interesting thing, but broadly, this is the central message of both the verses. We'll look at a little commentary on verse number 6 and 7, which is just about a paragraph, tomorrow when we proceed there. I'll just be putting off the YouTube. If you have any questions, you can ask on Google Meet.